Good day, everybody. My name is Rob Knockenhauer. I'm here with Protocol UAS, here to talk to you today about obtaining waivers for complex UAS operations. All right, so now I'm going to give you a little backstory about who I am and why I'm telling you about the waivers for Part 107. So my career started off as an aircraft mechanic. I went to a place called East Coast Aerotech many years ago, and I am a certified aircraft mechanic. From there, I went on to become an engineer. I've gotten a degree in electromechanical engineering as a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical. I worked for a lot of years working on unmanned systems. What you see here is one of the unmanned systems that I got to work on, a product called the Sea Talon, which I worked at a place called Kinetic North America. And a lot of the work that I did there was primarily for DoD focused. Once I left Kinetic, I went to a company called Aurora Flight Sciences that you've probably heard of, and I got to work on their small UAS programs as well. And then in 2015, I went to a company called GreenSight, which is the operation I've highlighted here, where I worked as the director of flight operations for 4 years, setting up the unmanned drone program that we had for servicing golf courses all over North America. And it is in that role that I found myself facing the questions that you might find yourself facing about how to get an operational waiver. And I had some success in being able to apply for and get issued operational waivers at GreenSight, which I'll go into details here. At this stage, I've gone into program management at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, which is where I'm working currently, helping them secure complex operational waivers for doing more interesting things with drones here in the state. Beyond that, I'm working here with Protocol, and Protocol's goal is as an operation to help other companies that are out there and looking for instituting their own drone programs. And so in that role, what we do at Protocol is we advise how you might identify the goals that you want to use UAS for, and then to set up a right-sized program to meet those goals. I have had the fortune of having applied for and obtained 5 10731 known as BBOS waivers, and I'll get into some of the details about that. All right, so as most of you know, the regulations that are subject to waiver are these. You have 10725, which is operating from a moving vehicle or aircraft. 10729, the daylight operation. 10731, visual line of sight of aircraft. And 10733, which is a visual observer, which kind of tends to go hand in hand with 31. 10735 is the operation of multiple small aircraft. 10737 is operation near aircraft. 10739 is operation over people. 10751 is the operating limitations of the aircraft, either speed, altitude, or visibility or distance from clouds, which would be weather type of operations. I've highlighted 4 of these here, which are the ones that I have the most experience with. I will touch on the others as we go on. So one of the things that can be frustrating is working with the FAA. I can share that I have been frustrated working with the FAA over the years myself, but what I have come to appreciate over the time that I've been doing this is that the FAA is really here to help. I mean, they want to help move this industry forward, but at the same time, they are forced to be hesitant because their main goal is safety of the mass. That said, I want to point out some things that are critically important here, which is the waiver safety explanation guidelines. One of the things I'm going to repeat again and again here is the operational risk and mitigations questions. And it's the PDF document that I have linked here. That is the document that I have used in all the waiver applications that I've put together, answered those questions for the FAA to do. All right. So this was an interesting exercise that I went through in preparation for this. The numbers of FAA issue Part 107 waivers is 4676 as of yesterday, or December 10th rather. And so the overwhelming majority, as you can see here, 94% are the daylight operation waivers, allowing you to fly your UAS at night. And then the lowest is the operations of flying from, I'm sorry, this is, I've forgotten what it is. It's the operating nearby other aircraft, main aircraft. There have been 0 waivers issued for conducting UAS operations in the vicinity of manned aircraft. The others are pretty low compared to the nighttime waivers. You have the operations over people waivers coming in at a very distant second at 149 waivers issued over the past 4 years that Part 107 has been live. All right, 107.29 waivers. This is the most commonly issued waiver. That said, just because it is the most commonly issued waiver, it is not easy. You still have to put together a comprehensive explanation about why you want to conduct your operation and how you're going to satisfy the risk associated with operating at night. Things I'll point out here is that there are 5 operational risk and mitigation questions for operating at night. I have applied for a night waiver through protocol and answered all 5 of those questions. One of the things I want to point out that are pretty big deals are to each of these operations needs to have a VO associated with it, and importantly, you need to indicate how you're going to train your pilot, your VOs, any other personnel that are supporting the operation to assure that they know how to conduct those operations safely at night, and to have a record indicating that those people that are involved with that operation have been trained. Right. All right, now we'll get into the 107.31 waivers. So the bulk of my presentation here is focused on this. The first one that I had received was when I was working with GreenSight. We were issued our first BV loss waiver on December of 2017 for conducting an operation at a golf course. Golf course you see here is a place called Outlaw, and is in a part of a property called Desert Mountain in Scottsdale, Arizona. The premise of the way this operation works is that we have a VO at the property who is maintaining visual line of sight of the drone while it's flying, and then we have a pilot in command who is remotely commanding the aircraft to conduct the pre-programmed flight plan that we set up in the aircraft operates. That person who is the pilot of the aircraft was in our offices in Boston while the aircraft was being flown in Scottsdale. That is the biggest deal of this particular waiver, is the fact that you're operating a aircraft truly remote. As a requirement of that waiver, we were required to have a full duplex communication between our remote pilot in Boston and the VO on the ground in Arizona, where we were effectively doing a screen share between our pilot in Boston and the VO on the ground in Arizona. So the operation overview here, this is just give you some of the mechanics about how this worked. So at the customer location, in this case, golf course in Arizona, and 5 other golf courses that were added after the 2017 issue of that waiver. We have a drone that is connected to the GreenSight network via a 900 megahertz radio link that is hosted at the properties network, and then that radio link is connected directly to the drone. The information that we're passing over that link is telemetry data. All we're getting is information on the aircraft about where it is, GPS coordinates, its altitude, the level of its batteries, compass states, and all those health issues that we need to make sure that the aircraft is operating properly as it conducts its mission. The local VO at the site is also a 107 certificated operator. Part of the requirement here is that that person needs to have a controller, so that in the event that something went wrong with our data link, like if we were to lose our data link to the aircraft while it was operating, we could communicate directly with the VO on the ground, who could then use the controller to recover the and that person is trained in how to do that recovery operation, and also was fully trained in how to review that operation as it was operating normally. In Boston, we have also a 107 certificated operator who is the RP, who is assessing the health of the aircraft from our location in Boston, and if the aircraft checks out, passes our pre-flight inspection, then we're able to initiate the execution of the launch of the aircraft at the site in Arizona in this case. So the way it works is that at the beginning of a flight operation, our flight monitor or the remote pilot in Boston contacts the VO or the emergency RP at the site at the scheduled time, and the customer then takes that aircraft from the charger, conducts a pre-flight inspection. This is also a very important part of the operation, is that we needed to, this is why we have to have a 107 certificated operator on the ground in Arizona, is because that person needs to perform a pre-flight inspection in accordance with Part 7 regulations. Once that inspection has been done and the aircraft passes that inspection, it is then placed at a designated launch point. The VO on the ground makes sure that the site is clear of any passersby or any other things that could interfere with the flight operation. Once that information has been passed on to the pilot in Boston, that remote pilot then does the electronic assessment pre-flight of the aircraft and executes the flight mission to run and collect the data that the aircraft is meant to do. Because in the end of the day, it's like the operation is to satisfy a need. So during the operation, our pilot in Boston monitors the vehicle health for the entirety of the mission, and if something looks, like that it's not quite right, the pilot in Boston can execute an early termination of that mission as required. Typically, that would just involve sending it back to the place where it was launched from and having it land. But normally, it would just go back and land on its own. All right, so the waiver application, the reason why we selected this golf course is here in North Scottsdale. It is very far, we are pretty far outside of the Class Bravo of Phoenix, and also pretty far from the Class Delta in Scottsdale, and somewhat nearby a private and Carefree. We selected that site because there was no issues of flying over nearby neighborhoods or roadways, and the property is abutted by a state park. So we made that selection to give us the lowest risk out of all of the customer locations that we were operating at the time. One of the things that we were able to do for building our safety case for applying for this particular waiver was we had a number of VLOS operations that we conducted at the site. We've done over 100 flights, and we had detailed the link strength of our radios and the overall health of our aircraft and liability of the aircraft in its operation at that place for the duration of those operations. We were able to outline explicitly how we were going to run the operation, the communications protocols that were done between the operator at our office in Boston, the remote pilot, and then the VO that was on the ground in Scottsdale. We also were able to put together a pretty comprehensive assessment of what we would do in emergency situations, if the aircraft batteries got too low, if we had issues with compass, if we had link loss, all of those things were spelled out explicitly in great details to explain how we recover the aircraft in that particular situation. And that was extensive. That was the green site waivers. So now we're on to Mass DOT. These waivers are a little simpler in some regard, where we don't have a big separation between the remote pilot and the VOs. In this particular case, we have a remote pilot who's just sending an aircraft to up to 1.5 nautical miles from the RP location, beyond the RP's visual line of sight, using VOs to maintain VLOS of that aircraft while it's operating, and also to assure the airspace is clear while conducting that operation. Similar to what we did at Green Site, is there is a requirement for full duplex comms between the remote pilot and the VOs that are used in this operation. The difference being that there was no screen share required. Basically, this is just a two-way communications link using cell phones is the primary method is in this particular case. So the operational overview. On site, we have DJI aircraft. It is a Mavic 2 Pro. We're using dual control scheme mode for operating the aircraft, where we have a primary controller bound to the aircraft with the RPIC, who's piloting the aircraft for the duration of the flight under normal conditions. And then a secondary controller with the VO, who is acting as an emergency RPIC, who can take control of that aircraft and the primary link is severed. And the VO, the way the waiver is written, is the VO is at the distance that is far reach of where the aircraft operates, so that there's a very solid connection of having VLOS of the aircraft from either the VO with the controller or the RP with the controller. And that's pretty much the way we've done our air risk mitigation for this particular operation. Each member of the team is trained in normal operating and emergency operating procedures. So we've done fairly extensive training already, running the operation in simulating different types of failures, which are lost links, low battery, those types of things. The thing that is most interesting here is the way that the dual controller scheme works on the DJI aircraft. We learned through experimentation that it is conceivable to separate those two controllers up to a mile or a mile apart, and still have them function completely independent of one another and drive the aircraft. It's an interesting thing, and be happy to discuss that more details if you're interested. Right, so the waiver application for our operation is in air. We actually were just approved yesterday for a second operation in Cape Ann, which is the Rockport, Gloucester area, Massachusetts. And what we have done is similar to what we did at Green Site, is there was an airspace assessment made to conduct an operation outside of any controlled airspace. As you can see, the purple line here indicates that's the edge of the Mode C Vale for Boston International Airport. The nearest airfield here is a small field called Minuteman, which is an uncontrolled field. And what we were able to do in this case, in lieu of the what had happened at Green Site, we showcased past history of operation at the site. In this particular case, we have cited the COTS UAS and the details of its operating scheme, its FCC compliance, and that was good enough to factor here. So at Green Site, the difference being was that we were using a custom UAS. That custom UAS did not have an established history that this COTS aircraft does. Again, part of the safety case is detailing where our crew members are going to be at various points along the ground during the operation, and then talking about the training, about how we, both, have training to run the operation normally and under emergency situations, and then also to comply with the federal railway agencies regulations to allow us to be at the rail sites that we're operating at from SDOT. All right, so that ends the section on 10731. I'm happy to take any questions as they come up as we go through this. And now I want to get into operations over people. So this is what I had done when I worked at GreenSite. We applied for an operations over people waiver using the custom aircraft that GreenSite had built, and using the operational history that we had for incidents that we had versus the population density of the places we're flying over, which were golf courses. Had a lot of compelling information and was able to put together an application that was probably the most time-consuming application that I had put together for a waiver was this operations over people request for GreenSite, which was rejected because, frankly, our safety case did not meet what the FAA was looking for. I think we had a likelihood of like 1 in 10 million chance of potentially hitting somebody on the ground, which was not high enough. So, or not low enough, rather. So I'm not sure what the threshold was. Of course, they didn't tell us. So, but what I have done is I've done a lot of research on operations over people, and one of the things that's interesting to note here, you can see in the first few years that, this is set up in 6-month blocks here, that not many waivers were issued, and it wasn't until June of 2019 when the ASTM standard went live that the numbers really started to take off. Some more background on operations over people. There were some really interesting milestones that happened there. So in April 2017, first operations over people waiver was issued, and this was a full 8 months after Part 107 went live, and it was issued to FLIR for an aircraft that is weighs 18 grams. So it's the I forget the name of the aircraft. It's a PD-100, so it is basically a special forces type of aircraft, and that waiver was then followed up in October of 2017 by CNN, who I had heard spent a lot of money and put a lot of effort into getting this mainstream operations over people waiver for doing news gathering, which makes sense, and perfect application. They contracted this company called Vantage Robotics, and they made this fully frangible aircraft that you see here, and it's quite amazing. Unfortunately, as far as the sensor goes, it wasn't quite, everybody wants a bigger, better camera. This was, I think, maybe 720p or something to that effect, and it was not, as widely used as I think hoped it would be. Then there are other companies like Project Wing, the Wing company, and Matternet working with UPS to get getting issued 10739 waivers on their precursor of type certification to get 135 certified for doing delivery operations. And then finally, the last waiver that I'm going to point out here is the June 2019, a company named Hansel Phelps gets the first operations over people waiver for the ASTM certified parachute recovery system made by a company called ParaZero for the Phantom 4. And ParaZero has done a phenomenal job working with the UAS test sites, New Air up in upstate New York, you got Griffiths, and then the North Dakota UAS test site, Northern Plains, was also instrumental in collecting a lot of the test data that they needed to validate that the parachute recovery system worked repeatably every time it was issued. So great win for ParaZero, and certainly for anybody who needs to conduct operations over people. It opened the doors to make that application a lot simpler. So now on to some other waivers. This is 107.25, which is the operations from a moving vehicle or aircraft. So not many issued here. There are 3 issued, and I don't know the context of why these were issued, but I will point out here that it says no person may operate a UAS from a moving land waterborne vehicle unless it's flown over a sparsely populated area. So the point of that is it's conceivable to operate an aircraft from a land waterborne vehicle, not an aircraft, if you're operating over an area that is sparsely populated. What the threshold of population density is for sparsely populated, that is an answer I don't have. It's I have not found any clear information on that, and I'm certainly welcome anyone to find it. Then on the 107.35 is the swarms variable. So there's been 47 of those issued. The ones that I'm most familiar with are the companies that are using those waivers to conduct light shows. Obviously, Intel has put on some amazing light shows with drones. There's also Verge Aero was the first organization to get that waiver, the 107.35 for conducting light shows. So great use of drones, really. All right. And then 107.37 is operation near aircraft. None. There have been no waivers requested. Well, I don't know that there have been waivers requested. There have been no waivers granted to do those types of operations. And I'm not quite sure what that means exactly, but it's an interesting thing to know. 107.51, the operation limitations, ground speed, altitude, minimum visibility, and minimum distance from clouds. 90 of those have been issued, most of them for altitude, and from my understanding is most of those altitude variances are for conducting tower inspections or other similarly taller than 400-foot objects that you can't actually maintain the close proximity to. Actually, it's to fly over them, because you're allowed to fly as high as the object, but not over the top of that object, according to the standard 7 waiver, or sorry, the 107 rules. What's interesting here is going through this, I discovered there's some notable 107 waiver accomplishments, which is pretty fun. So there's Arnie, I can't say his name, with FLIR UAS for 6 regulations wavered in 2017. And this again was for the PD 100, which is the small handheld. Like I said, it's a small surveillance drone, basically. And then David Lowe with Sci-Fi Works. Sci-Fi Works, unfortunately, was one of the manufacturers that has not made it at this stage, which is unfortunate. But they were running a tethered system back in the early days of these drone operations, and they got 5 regulations waived in 2018 for their tethered system. So they were able to run multiple aircraft, run at night, do BV loss. No, I'm sorry, not BV loss. Yeah, it was multiple vehicles, and then they had the weather minimums as well here. So great, really interesting stuff there. So. All right, and at this point, I want to talk about the waiver application strategy. Basically, what you should focus on here. I'm going to say it again: the waiver operational risk and mitigation questions that the FAA has put on their website is the #1 thing to look at, and to answer those questions as plainly as you can. What I've learned is that the AFS 800 team that does the evaluations of these operational waivers that get requested evaluate each of those waivers against that list of questions. And if you do not answer those questions, you are not going to get a waiver, is what it comes down to. So that's, and some things that I've learned along the way is that you need to explicitly spell out how you're going to run your operation. So in addition to answering the question, it's a good idea to put together a concept of operations, or spelling out exactly how you're going to conduct your complex operation, or you can never assume that they assume that you have common sense, because they don't know, and you know, people are all over the spectrum. So you need to identify the hazards, which kind of comes back to the operations, risk, and mitigations, and then certainly have a solid mitigation strategy for how you're going to address the risk that you have in your operation. Using the FAA resources, UAS help at FAA.gov. I have sent many emails to UAS help at FAA.gov, and I've gotten a lot of really good guidance there. That's been really helpful. And then finally, asking for help. You know, there's a lot of people in this industry that have helped me along the way. I mean, I've had the fortune of being able to have great conversations with a lot of great people who are passionate about growing this industry and growing the capabilities of drones, and how we use them for all different good things that drones are able to do. So that's the way to do it. So, all right. And then this is a letter that I've received on a few occasions, because you know, out of the gate, you know, applying for waivers, I certainly didn't have an appreciation about how to build a comprehensive safety case. You know, I mean, I had some ideas about how to spell things out, and I think, you know, going back to what I had said on the previous slide, talking about common sense, assuming that they would assume that I would do things with a way that had some level of common sense, and I was wrong to make that assumption. And I get that. I get it. It's like that they need to have everything very clearly and plainly spelled out for them. So certainly, when you do get a rejection letter, the best thing to do is to ask for a debrief. It's a mixed bag. I have found them in some cases to be very hard to get. Certainly, this particular one that I'm citing here is for the operations over people waiver that I applied for Green Site, and I frankly did not get a very clear answer. And again, as I stayed out here, don't expect a clear answer. So it's it can be frustrating, but again, you know, there are other resources available. So certainly, you know, you have professionals that are more well versed about how to apply for and get these waivers approved. There's a number of legal options out there. There's a lot of choices out there. I guess what it all really comes down to is what you're looking to spend. And to that end, I would say, you know, that is probably one of the most important things you can do before you apply for a waiver, is to make a cost benefit analysis of what it's going to take and what you're really to gain. Finally, yes, again, I'm you know, call out again to use the FAA resources. So if you get rejected, go back to uashelp.gov. So great resource. All right, that is all I have. It's been great to share all this information with you. And if there are any questions, I will be available during the live session on Thursday. And certainly you're free to reach out to me through the Interdrone user interface, and I will respond as quickly as I can, or you can alternately reach out to me in my contact information here. Thank you.